Hello, and thank you for joining the Chicago Energy Benchmarking Ordinance Training. My name is Amy Jewell, and I'm a part of the Chicago Energy Benchmarking Working Group, the group that's bringing this training to you. This working group is a collaboration of individuals and organizations working with the City of Chicago to successfully implement and support energy policy, such as the Energy Use Benchmarking Ordinance. Members of the partnership include USGBC Illinois, AIA Chicago, ASHRAE Illinois, Elevate Energy, the Midwest Energy Efficiency Alliance, the City Energy Project, and others. I am personally with the City Energy Project. This is the first of two-part training. The goal of today's presentation is to familiarize you with the details of the Chicago Energy Benchmarking Ordinance, to explain the ordinance requirements and how to comply, and to share information on free resources and assistance. So today, in this video, we're covering part one of the agenda you see on the slide. Part two will be covered in a separate training video found on the same web page where you found the link to this video. The goal of the Chicago Energy Benchmarking Ordinance, which was passed in September 2013, is really to raise awareness of energy performance with a focus on information and transparency. Many buildings have hidden or unexplored cost-effective energy efficiency opportunities. So by increasing transparency and awareness of energy use, benchmarking really helps buildings and building teams identify these cost-effective opportunities to save money and save energy, while also leading to job creation, reduced pollution, and creating a more sustainable city. Building energy use is a huge economic and environmental opportunity. Chicago residents and businesses spend approximately $3 billion a year on building energy use for electricity and natural gas and other types of bills. And data from the last 3 years of implementing this ordinance show that up to a quarter of the energy used in buildings in Chicago might be wasted. So this ordinance focuses on buildings larger than 50,000 square feet, which is less than 1% of all the buildings in Chicago, but together account for about 20% of all building energy use. And we should note it's also improving energy efficiency is also an important element of the city's overall sustainability strategy found in Sustainable Chicago, which is a strategy to make Chicago more livable, competitive, and sustainable. It also helps support the city's long-term greenhouse gas reduction goals found in the Chicago Climate Action Plan. So an overview of this ordinance, again, it focuses on data accuracy and transparency of information. Buildings 50,000 square feet and larger are required to do 3 things: track your whole building energy use once per year, verify the data accuracy once every 3 years, that starts with the first year the building complies with the ordinance, and then report the data to the city once per year. If you don't get anything else from this training, please know that there are support resources to help you comply with this ordinance. The Chicago Energy Benchmarking Help Center is available by phone or email, and you can see that information on the slide here. Please give them a call with any question at all, and they can help you. And you can go online to find the full ordinance text and a number of resources at www.cityofchicago.org/energybenchmarking. Energy benchmarking has an enormous value for buildings. It's been associated with several benefits. What you see on this slide are some results from the first 3 years of implementing the ordinance, from 2014 through 2016. This information is found in the city's 2016 Chicago Energy Benchmarking Report. As you can see here, buildings that have benchmarked for 3 consecutive years in a row have on average reduced energy use by about 4%, saving almost $12 million collectively in utility bills per year. And meanwhile, their Energy Star scores, which is a metric of energy performance, have gone up. We've seen similar results for the properties that have reported for 2 consecutive years in a row. As the saying goes, you can't manage what you don't measure. And energy benchmarking helps buildings to measure and understand their energy use, identify cost-saving opportunities, and make smart investments in energy efficiency retrofits. And another summary of some of the benchmarking results so far, you'll see on this slide some of the stats from the 2016 benchmarking across the city of Chicago. Almost 2,700 buildings participated in 2016, including over 100 voluntary reporters that weren't required to comply but chose to do so anyway. This is nearly 750 million square feet of space in reporting buildings. All neighborhoods have at least one reporting building, and the vast majority have 5 or more reporting buildings. So this is an ordinance that really hits every part of our city and every neighborhood in our city. For more details, please go to the city's website, linked again down at the bottom of the slide, and download the 2016 Chicago Energy Benchmarking Report and infographic. So now that you know some of the basics and benefits of energy benchmarking, we'll go into who needs to comply and some of the exemptions that may be available. Basically, buildings 50,000 square feet and greater are required to comply. We get the question sometimes, what is a building? And it is identified and defined in the City of Chicago's municipal code. You can see the link there. In terms of who specifically must comply, it does apply to all building owners, managers, and agents of each covered building. However, only one report is required per building per year. So we ask that the different building owners, managers, and agents, if there are multiple parties involved, collaborate to make sure that there's only one report sent in per year. And then if a covered building does not comply with the ordinance, all the owners, managers, or agents can be held responsible, consistent with the definition of owner, which is also found in the Municipal Code of the City of Chicago. So what property types are subject to this ordinance? Basically, we break it down into 3 types of buildings: commercial, institutional, or residential buildings. Again, it's any building greater than 50,000 gross square feet. You'll see a list of some of the building types that are covered or are required to comply on the left side of the screen. However, there are some exemptions available. A permanent exemption is available for any building with occupancy use classified as open-air assembly units, industrial storage, or hazardous storage, so that includes manufacturing as well, or any building less than 50,000 square feet. A one-year temporary exemption is available in 3 different cases. New construction, so a building that is new and the certificate of occupancy was issued between January through December of 2016. Financial distress, which includes very specific situations, such as a building subject to a qualified tax lien sale or public auction, a building controlled by a court-appointed receiver, or a building that has been acquired by a deed in lieu of foreclosure. And the 3rd type of temporary exemption is for low occupancy, in which the building has had an average physical occupancy of less than 50% throughout the calendar year to be benchmarked, in this case throughout calendar year 2016. If you believe you are eligible for any of these exemptions, you can fill out an online form found at the city's website, www.cityofchicago.org/energybenchmarking, to apply for an exemption. On this slide, you'll see the phasing in of the ordinance over the first few years that it was in effect. Now that we're in 2017, any commercial, institutional, and residential building 50,000 square feet or greater must comply with the ordinance. As you can see, data verification, which is only required every 3 years, only applies to a subset of buildings in each year that they must comply. New this year in 2017, when you receive your notification letter or email from the City of Chicago, it will list the next year you're required to verify data. Note that if you reported data in the past, in 2015 or 2016, but you did not verify data, your letter may tell you that you are required to verify data this year in 2017. Keep in mind the annual reporting deadline every year is June 1st. So in 2017, your annual deadline for complying with this ordinance is June 1st, 2017. Many people ask, what does the city do with this data once it's reported by all these thousands of buildings? So the city is authorized to share the data in the 2nd year that a building complies with the ordinance. And this has already been rolling out over the past 2 years. In late 2015, the city published the first data set and then published its second data set in late 2016. So building-specific data is now available for over 1,500 properties, and the city will continue to publish the data each year, usually a few months after the reporting deadline of June 1st. You'll see some statistics on the web page here, on the slide here, excuse me, but as of February 2017, over 150 users have looked at the data that was released in late 2016 with over 100 downloads, and the numbers are even greater for the data that was released 2 years ago in 2015. The city has also partnered with the City Energy Project to create a energy performance map. You can go to this map, create your own comparisons of different building types to really visualize this data. You can look at both 2015 and 2016 results, and there's a link on this slide. So now that we've covered the basics of the benchmarking ordinance and who needs to comply, we're going to go through the simple 4-step compliance overview. I'd like to mention that there is a downloadable 2-page checklist that covers these 4 steps in more detail, as well as a step-by-step compliance guide. They're both on the city's website. Again, that is www.cityofchicago.org/energy-benchmarking. We would like to mention that 2-page checklist is for your use only and does not need to be submitted to the city. So the 4 steps are, number 1, get started, 2, benchmark the building, 3, verify the data if required this year, and 4, report to the city. We will now go through each of these steps in more detail. To get started, determine if your building must comply this year. Again, this does apply to any commercial, institutional, and residential property 50,000 square feet or larger. If you are a covered building, you should have received a notification letter and/or email in early March. There is also a full list of all buildings required to comply called the Covered Buildings List on the Chicago Data Portal. You can download that and find your building. Covered buildings that do not have a notification letter and are not on the Covered Buildings List, so if you have a property that you believe is subject to this ordinance, but you did not receive a letter or email and you're not on that Covered Buildings List, you can request a Chicago Energy Benchmarking ID from the Chicago Energy Benchmarking Help Center. There is an online form to fill out for that. If you did receive a letter and/or you're on that Covered Buildings List, but you believe you're not required to comply, please fill out the appropriate exemption request form, again, found online. Next, once you've determined that, yes, you must comply this year, we recommend identifying a benchmarking lead for the property. This is the person that's responsible for most of the work getting the benchmarking done, like gathering the data, entering it into the benchmarking tool, which is called Energy Star Portfolio Manager, or sometimes called Portfolio Manager for short, ensuring data verification is completed, and then submitting the results to the city. Anyone can be the benchmark, nearly anyone can be the benchmarking lead, including office staff, the property manager or assistant property manager, a building operator or engineer, or a third party. The benchmarking lead will need access to information on building characteristics and operations. So collaboration with on-staff staff is essential. Again, this benchmarking lead does not need to be a third party and can be internal staff. This person does not need to be the same person who is the data verifier, but it can be the same person. More details on data verification, by the way, are following in a few slides. So once you've completed step 1, the next step is to actually benchmark the building. You'll start by creating an Energy Star Portfolio Manager account. Again, that website is energystar.gov/benchmark. Then you will begin by gathering some basic building information. Some of the items you're going to need are the Chicago Energy Benchmarking ID. That's found on the notification letter or email you received. It's also found on the Covered Buildings List that is posted online. If you can't find it on either of those places, you can also request your Chicago Energy Benchmarking ID online using one of those online web forms. You will also need basic property details, different property use types, and then the whole building monthly energy use for all fuel types. If the benchmarking lead has not used Portfolio Manager before, then we highly recommend free online training, in addition to this training that you are currently viewing now. Free training is available at the US EPA's website, and we'll have links in a few slides to direct you to that free training. The next step is to benchmark the building by obtaining the whole building energy use data for January through December 2016 of all fuel types. Whole building data is required for benchmarking, and this reflects all the energy used in the building, including both common spaces and tenant-occupied areas. This also includes all energy types, so it includes electricity, natural gas, any other fuels such as district chilled water, district hot water, district steam, and anything else used at the buildings. Building owners and managers are not expected to request this data from their tenants. Rather, in most cases, the utilities will be able to provide the whole building data upon request, and this will be aggregated data. We strongly recommend using the utility whole building energy use data request systems, which will improve the accuracy of your data submission and will save the actual time needed to complete energy benchmarking. We also recommend you start early to request this data from the utility companies. And we would like to mention the data request process is the same for all buildings, whether you're multifamily, commercial, municipal, or institutional. We will also discuss the data request process for both ComEd and Peoples Gas in Part 2 of this training. Step 3 is to verify the data. Again, the first year that buildings benchmark and then every third year after, buildings will have the energy and building data reviewed to verify that it's being tracked and reported correctly. Data verification helps ensure a high level of data accuracy and helps to create a level playing field for all covered buildings. The data verifier does not need to be a third party. However, the person does need to have one of the city-recognized credentials, which are shown on the next slide. The verifier can be the same person as the benchmarking lead, but does not need to be the same person. To verify data, the verifier will go through the 4 steps shown on this slide. There's a checklist generated in Portfolio Manager, which will be reviewed and signed by the data verifier. The data verifier will add the data verification, additional information, and his or her credential. And then we'll add this information as well to Portfolio Manager. The building will keep the hard copy of the checklist on file for 3 years. It doesn't need to be submitted, but may be requested by the city. The next slide shows the different credentials currently recognized for data verification by the City of Chicago. Once all the data has been verified and considered accurate, the verifier will sign the checklist, which again doesn't need to be submitted to the city, but needs to be kept on file. However, it's very important that the verifier do include his or her information into the building's Energy Star Portfolio Manager profile. There are detailed instructions on how to do this in the benchmarking guide. A site visit is not required for data verification, but may be performed at the verifier's discretion if needed. In general, the level of review and documentation needed should be appropriate so the verifier is comfortable signing and stamping the checklist using her or his credential. One note is that Energy Star certified buildings that have received the Energy Star Award from the US EPA do not need to do additional data verification if the certification covers at least 6 months of 2016. So if the building was Energy Star certified at any time after June 2016, the building does not need to complete data verification. Links to each of these training credentials is found on the city's website, where you can learn more about gaining one of these licenses or training credentials. The final step is to report the data to the city. This includes generating and reviewing the data in Portfolio Manager, making sure it has been verified if required this year. Another important item to note is only a subset of your building's data will be reported to the city. Not everything in your Energy Star Portfolio Manager profile is sent to the city. Every year, the city issues its unique reporting link. So this year, you will need the 2017 reporting link to submit the data electronically to the city through Portfolio Manager. Once you click on that link, you'll go through a few steps and send the data to the city. You'll receive some confirmation emails. We do ask that you save those emails as proof of submission. Keep in mind that every year there is a unique link, so the link you might have used in previous years will no longer be valid for reporting and complying with the ordinance this year. So to review the 4 steps required to comply with this ordinance, you'll get started, determine if you need to comply, and identify someone to lead the benchmarking process. You'll benchmark the building, which includes creating a new Portfolio Manager account if you don't have one already, gathering basic information, creating a property profile, and gathering the required whole building energy use data. If required this year, and again it's required once every 3 years, you will need to make sure the data is verified. And then the final step, reporting to the city by generating the building's report, reviewing it, and then submitting the report using the unique 2017 link. Many people often ask what happens if I do not comply with this ordinance. The city is authorized under the ordinance to enforce it by levying fines for noncompliance. Basically, if the ordinance requirements have not been met by the annual deadline of June 1st, the city may issue a notice to correct, giving 30 days to come into compliance. After 30 days, if any and all persons still not in compliance and fail to comply, the city may issue a notice of violation. The fines that the city is authorized to levy are shown on the slide. It's $100 for the first day and $25 for each additional day after, for a maximum of just over $9,000 per year. The full rules and regulations, as well as the full ordinance text, are posted online for your review. To summarize, there's a number of benchmarking support resources available. Again, we recommend US EPA's free online resources to help get started with benchmarking and Energy Star Portfolio Manager. We strongly recommend you reach out to the Chicago Energy Benchmarking Help Center with any questions on how to comply with this ordinance, and you can see their phone number as well as email address on the screen. And finally, the complete list of trainings, any link in this video, office hours, and other resources are posted at cityofchicago.org/energy benchmarking. This concludes the first half of the training. In the second half, which is a separate video, we're going to go into more details of data collection and using Energy Star Portfolio Manager. In the second half, we will go into how to create a building profile, adding your Chicago Energy Benchmarking ID to the profile, obtaining the utility data for the whole building energy use, entering that data, verifying data, and reporting the data to the city. If you'd like more details on these steps, please review Part 2 of this training. Thank you again for joining the Chicago Energy Benchmarking training.